Hi.
Brittany, what's up?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Is that a Goosebumps shirt?
Yeah, it is.
Oh man, I love those books when I was a kid.
Yeah, thanks.
You're out.
What's
Hey,
going on?
hi. Nice to meet you.
You too. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Okay, sure. Cool. Um, I'm not sure how much time we have, but hopefully we have enough time that I can get some good questions in and stuff.
Sure.
My first question I wanted to ask, my first thing I wanted to ask was, how did you guys meet and get started? And I guess what I read was that it was a friendship first before it was a collaboration.
Yeah, for sure. So Luke and I met about 5 years ago. Luke runs a studio in Philly, and we met through a mutual friend. And at the time, I was looking to record some stuff. And I didn't know any other studios in the area, nor did I know any other drummers in the area. And Luke's a phenomenal drummer. So um, I hit him up and asked him if he was down to drum and also engineer a couple of tracks for me. And since then, I think we just not only found a chemistry in the studio, but just developed a friendship from there. And we've been hanging out and playing music ever since, mostly with Luke playing on my records and me just being a big fan of his stuff. But yeah, during the quarantine, we kind of looked at each other and said, "Hey, you want to collab on something?" And that's what we did.
Anything you want to add, Lucas?
Yeah. So we just to kind of tack onto that, I started working with a company called Brolic, and our mutual friend of ours, Matt Sommer, and Jamil's working for his company. So there would be a couple days I would go in and do some post audio work for a short film, and it was just a side studio in their office. So I would just walk past all the employees to hit the bathroom or grab a cup of coffee from the kitchen. And one day, Jamil just kind of approached me like, "Hey, I kind of heard you were starting a studio. Very interested in working with you." And then just kind of built from there.
Yeah.
And speak since you mentioned the studio, I did have a question about your studio. Can you kind of go into the studio more and some of the stuff that you do with the studio, some of the artists that you work with?
Self and two other Drexel grads decided we wanted to open up a space of our own. We realized it was super competitive and difficult to find a job in an already established space. And we knew we wanted to keep doing recording. So we pulled together our resources, had a lot of help from professors and other friends and family. And we opened up the spot, and it's been going since 2014. Kind of
Okay.
surreal. It's still going strong.
You want to talk about your new music that you have coming out. I want to talk about the single. The single's already out, so let's talk about the single and kind of where you got your inspiration from the single and talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So when quarantine kind of hit, I knew that Luke had some time that had freed up in his schedule, and I obviously had a lot of time at home too. So I had hit him up to see if he was interested in playing a couple of drum tracks on some songs that I was working on, and he did. And I had just under my own solo work released a track and worked on a couple of different ones with Luke. And during that time period, I think we just realized that we had a really good rhythm, sort of working independently but together. Sending stuff back and forth from his studio and my home studio, and I asked him to see if he wanted to collaborate, and I was really kind of unsure how we were going to go about doing it. Just because typically in the past, Luke has drummed on pretty much every single record that I've released in the last 5 years. He's drummed on several singles that have been in between then. So that formula was always, me writing complete songs and then having Luke go in there and figure out the drum arrangements and put it all together for me. So in this case, where it was like, okay, the two of us are going to kind of sit and write together. How do we get started? And Luke did a really good job laying down the foundation, basically saying, hey, listen, we don't necessarily need to start with complete songs, or nobody has to feel that pressure to come to the table with that. And he was like, why don't you just come up with some ideas? They don't have to be complete ideas, but they can be a few chord progressions, a couple of riffs here and there, whatever it is that you're feeling or dreaming up, and then send those over to me and I'll see what I can do with them. So yeah, Luke had taken some of the original stems from what I had written and rearranged them and turned them into just really great sort of foundations for the rest of the music for us to work on. And that's when we kind of got in the studio and finished those songs out. Now for the single Planet B, it was pretty interesting in the sense that, the song really started off as like, I think just a chord progression of 2 chords, or maybe a few chords. And on top of that, I layered a couple of riffs and some random sort of just vocal gibberish. And Luke took that, chopped it up. I can let him tell you more about this too, because he had engineered it. But, he kind of chopped it up, dropped it down a step, took the vocals and kind of made these ambient sort of like pops with them. And then we just sort of had this little structure. And then in the studio, the lyrics just started coming, the melody kind of came, and then we just filled it out from there.
Yeah, that idea that he had recorded ended up staying in the song, but because it dropped down 4 cents or 4 semitones, it ended up sounding more like a synth, but it's still in there and you can kind of hear it, but it almost has more of like a pad or synthy kind of vibe to it. So we wrote the song that way and then ended up recording more guitars on top of it for that single. But I specifically was like, Jamil, don't write full songs. We can finish them together. It'll be more fun and we can kind of like come up with the idea so we're not just going in from scratch, but leave it open. And it ended up really cool that way.
So from what I could gather, it seems like maybe because of the way quarantine kind of ended up, your creativity kind of flowed. I don't know if I want to say better, but differently. And it allowed you to kind of create music in a whole different way. Because
going off of that, it was more so that like I had the time available to work with Jamil, because this is kind of how I operate as Fried Monk. But when I'm in the studio with him playing drums or recording him, I'm not really wearing my monk hood, if you will, and I'm kind of just trying to be the musician or session drummer, if you will. But whenever I do any kind of production on my own within Ableton and Fried Monk stuff, it's really I always had a foundation with I went on this one website with like the early internet of forums and message boards, and it was called Future Producers, and someone would post a sample and then everyone would comment their flip of the sample, and it would be almost like an online beat battle. And that was like me learning GarageBand and Audacity, and I started messing around with that, and that's kind of paved the way for all Fried Monk stuff I've done.
Yeah, I think one of the things was that I don't know if necessarily obviously time gives you a lot of space to expand your creativity, but I think what this project really turned out to be, and what I think, whether we ever discussed it being that, I think at least for me, there was a hope that it would be kind of this way, in the sense that like, I'm a fan of Luke's music and I know what he's able to do. And he's got a very distinct style and an ability to take sounds and just do remarkable things with them. So I kind of looked at it and I was like, all right, Luke has this great production side, and it's also embedded in a whole genre of music that as a individual, I've never really been able to tackle or sort of produce myself, but I'm a fan of in general. Right. So it was like, Luke has this ability to take ideas and turn them into these really interesting thoughts. And I have the ability to come in and put in some melody here and there and kind of add my sort of rock vibe to it. So it's like this great sort of like mixture of like production, hip hop, trap, lo-fi, pop, rock, all just kind of blending together. And out of that came just, I think, some really interesting compositions that we were pretty happy with. So yeah, quarantine kind of, I think, just gave us the space to sit with each other and say, all right, I know we both have something great that we can contribute to each other's music and make really good music together. We've worked on music together for years, so we know that we have a dynamic that works in the studio and just mutual respect and friendship. So why not take this downtime to try and create something?
Awesome. What would you say, for I guess for each of you, would be the biggest influence on you? It could be a book, a song, just the biggest influence on you when you go in to create music.
I think probably for me, you know, it's just life in general. Like everybody experiences life through their own eyes, and it's your interpretation of how you live and how we all exist on this planet is sort of linear because it's only coming through your eyes, right? So I think my experiences, my interests are influenced by everything that's happening around in my life, whether it's a song I listened to that day, whether it's somebody I spoke to that day, whether it's something new I learned that day. I think somewhere in my brain, it's all sort of just organizing itself and pulling itself out in the form of music. And maybe that's just probably the way that I'm most honest with myself and most comfortable communicating how things work inside my head. So I don't know if it's any one thing. I think it's just a combination of just kind of living and existing, observing and experiencing life in what I feel is, my own individual way, just as I imagine everybody else here has their own experience with the human condition, right?
What about for
Yeah,
you?
jumping off that, it's almost like it's for me, music and creating it is like that's my free time, and that's where I have that escape from reality. So I guess I take bits of reality, but still use it to kind of zone out into whatever sounds I'm tweaking at the moment. For me, it's always really hard to write lyrics. I kind of have to force those out, so those are always an afterthought. And the tweaking of the sound and writing of the song is what I love doing. So that's like that comes easy. And then as far as lyrics, it's personal experiences. I try and write as if I'm writing as someone else often, where if something I've seen happened in my life or someone else's, I'll be like, whoa, that's intense. I should kind of try and take that and put a spin on it. Yeah. Yeah, I think music's just more so of like, it's just fun. I like doing it. The creativity is just kind of from, I'd love that I have the chance to listen to a Spotify radio station and find 5 new artists that you've never heard of before, and you can just love that one single. And there's so many new sounds I've been hearing since computer production has gotten more accessible for everyone. So there's crazy sounds on records now, and that's like the inspiration is just hearing things I haven't heard before.
And since you mentioned Spotify and how you love just going on Spotify and finding new artists and music, that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, what are some of the artists now, new artists, or it could be just old artists, but new artists that you really, really like to listen to that you've just find so just doing kind of really cool things and crazy things too, I guess.
I loved Haley Williams' last record.
Oh, yes.
Petals for Armor. The sounds on that sonically, like listening to that on a good pair of headphones, I was blown away. I actually threw my back out because I came home super drunk and then I couldn't fall asleep. So I was like, I'm going to put this album on and clean dishes. And I think I like tweaked it dancing a little bit the wrong way, but I was just so zoned out in that album that the next day I was like, I can't get off the floor. I need to just lay here for a little bit. Yeah, that one.
She's on another level for sure.
Yeah, I was never like a Paramore fan or anything. The hits were cool and I liked them and they were catchy, but that record was something I did not expect her to put out.
Yes, it's totally different than anything from Paramore. And me being a Paramore fan, I was surprised. So, but it's so good.
Hiatus Coyote is another one. They're an Australian jazz fusion band. Yeah, their stuff. That track Red Room, the drum tape hiss that is on that new single is so cool. I love hearing the sound of a room in a recording. And you hear a lot of room sounds in that Haley Williams record and the Hiatus Coyote. Like, what was it? Why We Ever? That one track, like when she starts to play the Rhodes piano in the middle and you can hear the piano bench squeaking. That shit is so cool to me.
Oh, I'd have to pay it. See, now you're going to have me looking for or listening for room sounds in songs.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
I
That's
like.
something I never would
I
have
really.
noticed.
It's the space between the notes that really intrigues me.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. What about you, Jamil?
Well, fortunately, Lucas has been kind enough to introduce me to Haley Williams and also Hiatus Coyote. So I've been enjoying those records quite a bit. But I don't know, a couple of records recently that I've discovered. A friend of mine, Harry, introduced me to an artist named Courtney Barnett, and I think she's fantastic. I think some of her lyrics are just some of the most, they're some of the more prolific storytelling that I've heard in a long time. And she's also got a very honest and sort of in your face, almost Nirvana-esque grungy vibe to her, which I really, really dig. Along those lines of sort of just really honest music, there was a record that came out maybe last year or the year before by Stella Donnelly. Um, and it was called Beware of the Dogs. And she just touches on a lot of subjects that I think that, it in many ways it shouldn't be taboo, or or people shouldn't have to suppress themselves from saying anything. But for some reason, I think sometimes society is like, whoa, did she just say that? And I think she delivers it in a way that is really emotive and really impactful. I love the new Fiona Apple record.
That's a good one.
Yeah, there's just been so much good music coming out. So it's almost like it's a bottomless pit of you know,
Mhm.
and I think that as long as people in the world keep finding the inspiration to doing that for the rest of us to enjoy, um, it's a treat to see what's going to come out next. Whether it's somebody bringing back a sound that's 50 years old, or somebody creating something that's completely honest and different, unlike you ever heard. You know?
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so how
Yeah.
far are you with the next two EPs?
Still very bare bones. The ideas are
Okay.
there. I think the
Okay.
structures are pretty much there, but that last, that's 25% is the longest.
Yeah. I think for
Okay.
us, the really interesting piece in the way that we work is we have a very strong ability to do the heavy lifting in a very short period of time, right? So it's almost like if you asked us to build you a house over the course of a week, we'd pretty much build you like the entire house, and then it would take us like another 6 months to help you furnish it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like
Uh-huh.
so, we have a really strong ability to get in the studio and just do a lot of the heavy lifting up front, and then we kind of take some time away from it. Luke does a really good job taking time away from it, which I think that when he comes back to it, he's able to just really crush it because it's new, it's fresh to him. He's had some ideas to separate. He's had some time to separate himself from the ideas where I obsess over it in the beginning, and then I think I take time away from it later. And somewhere between us both kind of putting our own little touches and then coming back together on it, it works pretty well. But these songs that we just released, I mean, we recorded almost a year ago, right? So it took some
Oh,
time to
okay.
put them
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
but at the same time, we don't have a label. We don't have a tour schedule or fans screaming for us to release something anytime soon. So not having that pressure of being on somebody else's time, on somebody else's
Mhm.
schedule, or having any expectations from anything other than just making music to make each other happy. I like that we can take the time to do it to the point where we feel it's the best it's going to be, or we're just tired of trying to make it better.
When you were going into the studio, what coming together, what was the hardest to get together in terms of either the lyrics or just I don't know, life was coming in and you just couldn't get that track together because of whatever.
I could answer that one. For me, it was writing the lyrics because I hate writing lyrics. At one point, Jamil was like, "You haven't written any lyrics yet. You need to write lyrics.
Uh,
Here's some paper. Write it." And that was the first half of the last song. But they came together really effortlessly.
mhm.
From the beginning, when Jamil asked to work together, I was like, "Cool." So the way I operate, send me sounds. I'll tweak them and try and make an idea out of them. And he sent me a folder with like 5 ideas inside of it. The first one that caught my ear, I sent back and sent him like a 2-minute song or so, maybe even less, minute and a half. And that was the only idea that we had going into the studio, which was the first track on the EP, Patient Zero. And then we had 2 days in the studio where we finished that idea and then wrote the other two. So it was like, the longest part is when you start diving into mixing and the mix revisions. That's where we need to tweak this to perfection, because then once we put it out, we can't tweak it anymore. But the writing of the melodies, that's always the fun part, and that comes super easily. And for Jamil, he pumps out lyrics and song ideas like it's nothing.
I mean, I think if there's anything that's sort of one-sided in this relationship is that, look, Luke's the engineer. He's the guy mixing these records, so he's put a lot of work into these songs in places that I can't, right? So during that process, he'll send the mixes back to me and say, what do you think? But I mean, the finished product is very much Luke putting his engineering chops, his creative interpretation of our work, his ability to sort of navigate a creative direction that we both sort of agreed upon and take it across the goal line. So for me, this is a super easy and stress-free like event. I get to sit in the studio and hang out with my buddy and make music. For me, like every time we do it, it's like, I guess, the equivalent of a golf weekend for somebody else, right? That it's like golfing for me. So I don't have to necessarily put in some of that stuff that Luke does. But I'll kind of take on some of the other side in terms of creating like the album artwork and some of the assets that we have. But that to me too is also fun. I don't know. I think it's really fun in the sense that when you get to be creative, at least for me, it feels like you're letting your mind go versus forcing your mind to work. And both of us have, regular lives and regular jobs and things like that. So those are and people, who depend on us. So we have responsibilities just like any other person does. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, like playing music, like Luke mentioned earlier, a big part of it is just the escape, the ability to get away from anything that requires you to have a deadline or requires you to make a commitment and just let it flow. So honestly, for me, I can't think of a tremendously difficult time at all during these songs outside of the fact that, and it's just the running joke between us and any musician who plays with me, I have horrible timing. We got to correct it sometimes. so maybe that's
as you say.
Yeah, that's maybe the hardest part for me in the studio is sitting there to the click and be like, God damn it, play, So I never grew up playing to a click. So
yeah, I want to revise my answer. The hardest part is Jamil has so many ideas and they're all amazing that it's really hard for me to remember them all, because I'm like, shit, like don't forget that before we get it recorded. And I'm in the process of like tweaking the vocal we just recorded or making sure that this one thing is perfectly timed. And he's like, oh, what about this idea? And as I'm sitting behind the computer doing that, he already has 4 new ideas for the next part of the song. I'm like, okay, hang on. That's the hardest part for me.
Okay, Jamil did mention something that I did want to ask about, which was the album art, which I thought was interesting, and I wanted to know because I think when I was listening to it and when I was reading about it in the assets, that the album was kind of like focusing on themes of like escapism and then of losing a sense of time and stuff like that. So I thought the album art was cool. And I guess you did mention that you did the album art, Jamil. How did you kind of come up with that? I always think album art is really cool, and I thought this album art was really cool.
That's a great question. Yeah. So I think for the single, we didn't get it on the first try. So I would, I kind of just sit up in my room and draw something or try and, Photoshop something together or paint something or whatever it would be. But sometimes the ideas were isolated in my head. So I draw something, do this or that, and send it over to Luke and be like, what do you think about this? We don't have to use it if you don't like it. And the good thing about us is we're pretty honest with each other. And I think that honesty is driven by trying to get the best finished product that we can get that also represents who we both are, right? Mm-hmm. So when somebody's like, nah, that's not a good thing, it's never like personal or your idea sucks and my idea is better. So I'd send him some drawings and some sketches and things like that for the album art. And he was like, nah, this is not what I was envisioning. And he had given me some direction in terms of trying to become a bit more abstract with it. And I can't remember exactly what you said or what you told me to focus on, but you definitely led us to what is now the artwork for.
Weird, yeah. So the single artwork is what you're referring to.
Yeah,
Brittany?
yeah.
With like the kind of, it's actually right back there.
Oh, there it is.
Got the glare, but you're talking about
Yeah.
that one, right? Above the crutch. It's kind of hard to see. Anyway, that one I think you used your first idea for your single, right? Beautiful Fortune with the
Yeah. So I had drawn like
was he ended up using for his own single, but it was after listening to Planet B over and over. I'm listening to the lyrics. I'm like, this is escapism, and it's like let's get away from everything we know right now. And what you drew the first time was familiar. I was like, make it unfamiliar.
I think that's what it was.
Make like the abstraction of familiarity. Familiarity. There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's what just it kind of led to is that sort of like giving me the idea of being a bit more unfamiliar, and in many ways, what's more unfamiliar to us than like sort of space and in some ways the ocean, right? So I kind of took those two themes and tried to create something as abstract with it, and obviously I'm we're singing in the song about living on the sun, which is a very impossible thing to do. So trying to create this idea of what it would feel like to live on a planet that you can't live on, and that's just how the artwork ended up. And I remember Luke was like, "Yes, that's what I was picturing in my mind." So, yeah, I mean, it's great. We have a way of communicating it to each other, and we also have a way that's super forgiving of, allowing each other to create. And if it doesn't really start or get to where we both need to be, it's just guiding each other to get to the destination versus anyone's art is more important than another's.
So my next question would be, what is the last thing that made you guys feel nostalgic?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a really good question.
I
I
saw
know this.
I saw someone post, this is so lame, but I saw someone post on like Reddit or something. They had all the plastic McDonald's Hercules plates from when Hercules came out. And I went through them all. I was like, I had every single one of those. And I missed those days of like just good like toys at any like fast food place. I remember there were a few that I really wanted to get. And I think it was on this page like Liquid Nostalgia on Instagram, where they just post things like the old Capri Sun commercials where they melt into like silver morphs of humans and then just travel as liquid.
I was at my niece's birthday party not too long ago, maybe like 3 weeks ago. And it was really cool because they had an outdoor party and set up like a outdoor screen in the backyard, and all the kids from the neighborhood came over, and they were all hanging out. And my sister-in-law, my brother, they put together like these little cups of candy. Now I'm not like a huge candy guy. I think I'm more of like a salty guy than I am a sweet guy. Although I do enjoy Sour Patch Kids at the movies, but for the first time, I mean, it has to have been since I was a kid or at least a teen, I had a blow pop. And let me tell you what, it was still as great and disappointing as I remember it to be. But it took me back to like, it's like, it's so delicious, but I don't have the patience to kind of go through the whole lollipop. So I just crunch into it real quick. And that few minutes of just candy and gum going together is perfect. And then it just becomes flavorless. But I remember, blow pops and candy in general was just a treat for us when we were kids. And I always loved the concept of blow pops. And so that kind of took me back to a little bit of my youth where, it had to have been 25, 30 years since I'd had a blow pop, and I really enjoyed it.
That's like, do you remember those zebra stripe gums that lasted all of 3 seconds? With
oh, those were the worst. Those were the worst.
They're great for the first 3 chomps. And you're like, okay, now this is rubber. Awesome.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned Reddit, I gotta ask a Reddit question.
Go for it.
Okay. What's your favorite Reddit subreddit?
I found this subreddit at the beginning of quarantine called Indie Music Feedback.
Okay.
And it's and I joined the Discord too, and it's just a super active community of musicians on Reddit that are the most like thoughtful and just generous people ever. There's sections where you can submit your track to ask for feedback, and all the feedback is just very genuine and thoughtful, and it's always to try and help you put out the art you want. And they were kind of a big means of me putting out and promoting my last EP. But yeah, they're great. Indie music feedback. I would check them out.
Are you on Reddit, Jamil?
I'm actually not. So I go to Reddit to like upvote my friends' musics, but that's about the extent of my Reddit usage. I think I should spend more time on there. I do hang out on Quora a little bit. Does that count? Is that the same?
It's different, but I most people, I'm surprised you know Quora, because when I mention it to other people, they're like, I've never heard of it.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, it's cool though. I know of it. So yeah.
Luke,
also, Birds with Arms is a phenomenal subreddit. They just Photoshop like muscle arms onto birds. It's hysterical. I would highly suggest.
Question would be, what was the last book that you've read that left an impression on you?
Go ahead.
I'm halfway through a philosophy book that's been really good. But I just don't really read as much anymore. I've been diving into comics because of that, and Preacher is one of the best comics I think I've ever read. The ending of that is phenomenal, and it wraps up like 12 different plot lines within the last issue. It's such a good read. I would highly suggest it. Kind of graphic and vulgar, but it's good stuff.
Okay. That's an interesting choice. Yeah, comics are accepted.
Cool.
It's reading, so
yeah.
I admittedly don't read as often as I used to. I podcast a lot these days.
Okay.
I think
we'll accept the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's been an easier way to digest things. But my friend Liz gave me a copy of Moneyball by Michael Lewis. I think it's by Michael Lewis. Yeah. And I'd seen the movie, but I'd never read the book. And I thought, as a whole, it was just a very interesting book in terms of how to think differently about creating solutions to challenges and problems. And also, one thing I really like was that Liz likes to write all over the pages. So she gave me her copy. And I thought one of the best parts was just her little notes that she was taking and seeing what she was picking up and taking away from the book as she was reading through. So that's probably the most recent book I've read.
My next question is, what was the earliest music memory that you have?
I have to think about that one. You know yours, Jamil?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of just general sort of music memories I have. I don't like, so my dad worked for the World Bank, and we spent a good portion of my childhood living in Jakarta. And in Jakarta, you didn't really have like cable, or didn't really listen to the radio that often. And there was certainly an affinity and excitement about Western culture, but that access was always sort of delayed and slower. So I remember that, on like Tuesday nights, MTV would have this short little, maybe 30 minutes of music that they would play. And it was always the same programming, like every Tuesday or whatever night it was, every single week. So I think they would start off with like Madonna's, I think it was Cherish or something like that. Is that the one where she's on the beach? I don't know. It was Madonna. Then they had Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up. They had the song with Sir Mix-a-Lot from the Ninja Turtles, Def Leppard, and closed out with Guns N' Roses. And that was like my music powwow. But I will tell you, every morning we went to school, I listened to a cassette tape of Bob Marley's Legend. And I would always listen to No Woman, No Cry. And it was several years later when I moved back to the States that I got a copy of the CD. And there was something that blew my mind, and it's just a music memory that always sticks with me. So for whatever reason on the cassette tape, I guess to fit on both sides, right as the guitar solo comes up on No Woman, No Cry, they start to fade it out. So for literally like the first like 7 years I heard that song, I always thought the song faded out in the guitar solo in the center. And it was when I got the CD and the first time I listened to it, I heard that entire guitar solo all the way through. Blew my mind that A, there was still like another 3 minutes left of this song. And B, that's just like one of the greatest guitar solos ever. So that's like a music memory that I always just think about, I guess. Yeah.
This isn't my first, but going off that story, it made me think of I had the Rugrats movie soundtrack, and I would listen to it on my CD player Walkman. And the one time I was going to like Thanksgiving or Christmas at my cousin's place, I didn't have my headphones in all the way, and it made the song instrumental. For whatever reason, the one stereo track didn't get sent to my headphones, and I listened to it over and over on that drive. And the song was One Way or Another, but the version on the CD was with Angelica singing it with the most absurd, like little kid voice. And then I was like, whoa, this is kind of out. And I plugged it in. And I was like, this sounds awful. I hate this. But I loved the song as an instrumental. So I tried to like position the headphones perfectly so I could just listen to the instrumental. But I think my first like, not earliest, but one of the most like pivotal ones was the same cousin whose house we were driving to made me a mixed cassette. And I remember he was so proud of it because he's 10 years older than me. So he was probably in high school and I was like 10 or 8 at the time. He was probably 18. And it had so many good 90s techno songs. Like back when it was like, there's a awesome female vocalist singing on top of like house music. Like Cotton Eye Joe was on it too, and like all absurd ones. But I just remember I was like, he made this for me by recording all the songs. Did it have
Chumbawamba on it?
No, I don't think it had Chumbawamba.
Oh, dang.
But he made it by like recording the radio and would like catch all these songs for me.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Yeah, and I was like, this is like he took so much time to do it. And I didn't think of it at the time, but it was like my one cassette tape that I always played. And there was this song, I'm a Dreamer by Amber. And my dad would make fun of it because there was like this little like vocal thing she did in the beginning before I started singing where she was just like, and it was like a percussive thing, but it was just an ongoing joke with my dad and me. So it's like, we would always just do that breath take back and forth. But that song is a jam. I would suggest checking out I'm a Dreamer by Amber.
It's hard to find. I've heard of it. I don't know that one. I don't know that one at all. But yeah,
it's good.
Like that's like total 90s kid. We would get we'd buy the blank cassettes and then we'd find a radio station and then we'd be like, our favorite song is on, let's tape it.
Yeah, and if you missed it, you were screwed until like the next day or whatever.
I used to sit there with my hand on the record button.
Yep. Yeah, you didn't want to get too much.
Yeah, it's
crazy. You didn't want to get too much and waste the tape because then you couldn't get the next song.
Or you didn't want to miss the intro,
Yeah.
Like there was so many good things. But I also remember like being a kid, like while all my other friends were down at the 7-Eleven, like, hey, mister, can you buy me cigarettes? I was in front of the Tower Records like, hey, mister, can you buy me the record with the parental advisory sticker on it?
Do you remember how they would put out the edited version?
The edited version sucked.
It was so dumb. I remember I ripped the parental advisory off of Marshall Mathers LP, and I tricked my mom thinking it was the edited version because I just rubbed the sticker off. And I think the clerk too, like knew, and they were just like, all right, asshole, here you go. But like I was like, I shouldn't be listening to that. I was way too young for that record.
But like in my house, we only had one stereo, which was like in the living room. So when you watch the edited versions on MTV or whatever it was, like I get down and I buy it. I remember the first time I was so excited. I bought the Chronic and I listened to it. And I had to listen to it on headphones in the living room. It was the only stereo we had. My parents would have murdered me if they heard what was going on that record. Yeah. But that record was amazing. It's just like one of those life-changing records, Yeah.
I guess since you have Beatles poster behind you, favorite Beatles record?
That just changes every couple of years. But I think probably at the moment, I think how about this? If you could only leave me with one Beatles record, like on an island or something like that, I think I would go with the White Album, just out of the fact that that would give me the highest amount of quantity of Beatles songs that I could have, right? I think the back half of Abbey Road is some of the greatest just body of music ever made. I might lean towards Revolver. No, I think Revolver is a pretty good one, but it changes all the time. I don't know if there's ever a wrong answer with picking anything Beatles.
No, but I'm glad you did mention the back half of Abbey Road, because I get a lot of crap in my household for talking about the back half of Abbey Road, because I start mentioning songs that no one knows.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is this? And because one of my favorite Beatles songs, which is according to music critics, is one of the worst Beatles songs, but it's one of my favorite Beatles songs, and it's Maxwell's Silver Hammer.
That's such a good song.
And
Who doesn't like that song? Who doesn't like that song?
And
what
I love
critic?
that one. It's so weird.
That's such a fantastic song. It's so mischievous, right?
Yeah, it's just weird.
But so here's the thing. Luke is not actually a huge Beatles fan, but I think somewhere but I think somewhere deep down inside he really is.
No, I love it. Like Strawberry Fields is like a jam and a half. I really like enjoyed listening to that. The first time I heard it, I was blown away. Rubber Soul, I could get down with that album as a whole. I just never I said this before, my parents didn't listen to the Beatles too much growing up. I was always just shown other rock or classic rock around that time. I guess a little later, like Zeppelin, Dire Straits. Dad loved Guns N' Roses. I just wasn't shown it before, and then by the time I was around other people that did, I was like, this is too much. There's way too much to start diving into this.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, Luke, why I think you might be a great Beatles fan or a big Beatles fan. And I think this ties into our own music, is that, not that we're the Beatles, but Luke and I both share a propensity for writing songs that are sort of deceptively upbeat, along with really sort of dark lyrics. And Lennon did that a lot. But when you mention a song like Maxwell Silver Hammer, that's exactly it. It's this upbeat, bouncy song that's actually really messed up. It's really messed up, and you saw that theme over and over and over in the Beatles, and you would always think it was just John, but then, Paul would come in with the lyric like, I used to be cruel to my woman. I'm, kept her apart from the things that she loved, right? Over this bouncy beat, right? So, Luke, I think you're deep down inside a Beatles fan, buddy, because you and I tend to gravitate towards a very dark landscape with a very sonically optimistic sound.
Sure. It's not that I don't like them. I just won't put them on.
I'm just teasing, buddy. I always put him in this corner that he hates the Beatles.
No hate.
It's kind of impossible. You like what you like.
Yeah, for sure.
I had to get a Beatles question in when I saw the picture.
You don't want to open this. We could talk Beatles for the next 3 hours if you want. They're my favorite band. So, same thing. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Goosebumps book? If you can remember.
I never read them. I stared at them in the book fairs and liked all the covers. And then I was like, maybe one day I'll buy one of these, and I never did.
Man.
I think I tried to read the doll one. The talking dolls or whatever, those murder dolls.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I watched the show when that was coming out around the time of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
For me, I was obsessed because I had this big Goosebumps stand that held all the books. I had every single book. I read the books at least 5 times when I was younger. If you wanted somebody that was obsessed with R.L. Stine and Goosebumps, that was me.
Okay.
It was just.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite one?
Oh, dang. Probably this is one of them, even though it was scary. Night of the Lemmy Dummy. I did.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah. That was the one I got halfway
there
through,
is
and I was like, this isn't for me.
Yeah, but it was kind of creepy. A lot of the books I did like the one about the haunted house. I liked all of them. I read them a lot. So,
Okay.
but yeah, they were pretty creepy. So,
I actually would love to read one as an adult because I remember they were like tastefully creepy and scary,
Yeah.
right? But nothing like, I guess over the top, right?
No, I think he had Fear Street as well, which was for like the
Mhm.
older teens.
Teens, right? Yeah.
And then he has some short stories and stuff. Yeah, I was obsessed. My last question will be, is there anything that I might have missed? Anything else you would like to add?
It's a new one. No one's asked us that.
Yeah, nobody's asked us that.
No, I think you kind of hit it all. I don't know. Check out the album. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
That's not going to be the last of us. We got more in us for sure.
Yeah, we got some more tank in the our gas in the tank for sure. But
yeah,
I think probably if I would add anything is this, like, as we're going through this process of releasing this record and a lot of people asking us about the songs and what they mean and so forth, I think their meanings changed us and they're evolving with us because we wrote it all so quickly. But I think that I would always just ask anybody, if anybody has their own interpretation or the lyrics or the songs mean something to them, we rather you run with that than what it means to us. If it means something to you, go for it, however you interpret it, how it makes you feel. I think that would be pretty cool for us to learn more than to express what it just means to us,
Yeah, that's great. That's how I always have gone with whenever I listen to music. I kind of go with obviously what the artist may have put out. They always have a statement, but I've always took my own meaning from songs as well, and that's a great ending to that. Thanks for chatting with me, guys. That was really great. Good luck on your music and good luck on the EP, and hopefully if you guys have a show sometime soon in LA, I can go see you guys. I don't know when that'll be because of COVID and everything, but hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Love that.
Hey, Brittany, thanks so much for the opportunity to take time to talk with us. It was so awesome meeting you. I had a blast, and we appreciate you learning a bit and taking your platform to share our story.
You guys are quite welcome. It was nice meeting both of you.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thanks, Brittany.
You're welcome.
All right, take care.
You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.